They didn't even pretend to grieve. I heard it with my own ears, 2 floors down from a nurse's phone on speaker. My daughter's voice, cheerful, almost giddy. Mom's plane crashed. Finally, we can sell everything. Then a laugh, a sharp, relieved laugh, as if I'd been a long-term illness that finally resolved itself. As if I hadn't built the house she grew up in, cooked her school lunches, co-signed her first car loan. As if I hadn't been her mother. I lay in the hospital bed, body shattered, ribs cracked like old china, lungs stitched by machines. The nurse didn't know I was awake. She'd left her phone unattended on the counter while grabbing linens. I shouldn't have heard it, but I did. And once you hear your child rejoicing in your supposed death, there's no one hearing it. They brought me in under Jane Doe because my purse and ID had been stolen during the evacuation. The manifest had listed me as missing, presumed dead. It made things easier, the nurse said, less pressure from family. I didn't correct her. I couldn't. Not with a punctured lung and a face swollen beyond recognition. They didn't know who I was, and for a moment, I didn't either. The plane had gone down in a ravine near the Canadian border. Out of 121 passengers, 87 died instantly. I wasn't one of them. I'd survived in a row torn off during descent, wedged between a tree and an icy ledge. The rescuers pulled me out hours later, unconscious, bleeding, blue with cold. A miracle, the doctor said, but all I felt was pain. And then I heard my daughter's voice, and pain became something else entirely. Her name is Candace. She used to call me Mommy, then Mom, then nothing at all unless she needed money. I'd given her the down payment for her first condo, paid for Bree's private kindergarten, covered credit card debt after her divorce. She never said thank you, not really. Just told me I was generous, like I was some foundation, not a person. I don't know what shocked me more, that she thought I was dead, or that she celebrated it. That night, in the darkened hospital room, I stared at the ceiling and counted ceiling tiles. 23. Then again, 23. I couldn't stop shaking. My body hurt, but my soul ached worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at 12, kissing my cheek before school. Where had that child gone? A man came the next morning. Suit, tie, polished shoes that didn't match the scuffed linoleum. He said he was from the airline. I could barely speak, but he smiled like I'd already agreed to something. They were offering settlements. Undisclosed amounts, he murmured. Time sensitive. He didn't know I was the woman with no family rushing to find her, no vigil, no posts, no crying daughter calling the hospital. Just silence. The nurse later told me Candace had already listed my house. Photos of the living room where I'd once held her during thunderstorms. The backyard where we planted daffodils when she was 6. She'd called it an outdated fixer-upper. My home. My life. There are many kinds of death. One is the body. The other is realizing you are no longer needed, not as a person, just as property. I lay in that bed and made a decision. I wouldn't tell them I was alive. Not yet. I let the man in the suit return, and this time I asked questions. About compensation, about process, about my rights. I had no teeth left to grit. I'd lost one in the crash, but I still had a spine. 3 weeks later, when I could sit up, they gave me a mirror. I barely recognized myself. Bruises like ink blots, hair matted, wrinkles deeper. But my eyes still knew. They'd seen childbirth, betrayal, widowing, bankruptcy. They weren't done yet. June Mallow, I whispered to the woman in the glass. You're still here. No obituary, no funeral, No daughter holding my photo with puffy eyes. Just a signature on a property listing and a voice saying, "Finally." That's when I began to plan. Not revenge. No, something colder. Justice. And I wouldn't raise my voice to do it. They moved me to a quieter wing once I could walk a few steps on my own. The nurses were kind but distant. The kind of kindness you extend to someone whose name you won't remember tomorrow. They called me Ms. Doe, offered warm broth and sponge baths, and avoided the question in their eyes. Why hasn't anyone come for you? I didn't ask them to call my daughter. I didn't ask for anything. The doctors said I was a slow miracle. Most wouldn't have made it through the second night, one of them told me, flipping through charts without looking at me. You're a tough one. I wasn't tough. I was stubborn. There's a difference. Toughness fights. Stubbornness endures. I'd spent a lifetime enduring. After 6 weeks, they released me into a rehabilitation center. Gray walls, cheerful volunteers, padded wheelchairs, and the occasional hymn in the common room. I stayed another month, relearning how to use a knife and fork, how to shower without help. I didn't let them know I was getting stronger faster than expected. I liked the silence. I liked that no one came asking questions. On paper, I was dead. The authorities had misidentified a charred body at the crash site as me. The dental records matched because I hadn't updated mine in 15 years. A clerical error, the kind that should never happen, but always does when no one's watching too closely. Candace had accepted it without hesitation, signed papers, scheduled a celebration of life. Not a funeral, no casket, no messy grief. Just a brunch at a country club and a slideshow of smiling pictures that, I imagine, didn't include a single recent one. The real estate listing had gone live 2 days after the crash. Charming, well-loved home with vintage appeal. The words were so hollow they echoed. She was already spending the inheritance, though the accounts hadn't transferred yet. My lawyer, one I'd used for years, reached out to her, asking for confirmation of probate proceedings. She replied within the hour, pressing for updates. She was in a hurry to bury me, legally. She didn't know that I'd already made changes to my will years before the accident. She didn't know that nothing was automatic, and she didn't know I was still alive, reading every email her eagerness left behind. The hospital had forwarded me a sealed envelope, documents from the airline's legal team. I opened it with shaking hands. The numbers were clear. 18 million. That was the settlement offer, in exchange for no public statements, no lawsuits, no interviews, just silence. I read it twice, then a third time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just folded it, placed it on the nightstand beside the rented hospital bed, and stared at the ceiling until the shadows moved across it. Candace used to say I was bad with money because I preferred saving to spending, because I packed lunches instead of dining out, because I drove the same car for 22 years. She said I had a scarcity mindset. I called it being responsible. And now I was holding more wealth than she'd ever dreamt of. The airline wanted me gone, discreet, forgotten. Candace wanted me dead, buried, out of the way. I had no interest in giving either of them what they wanted. Instead, I made a phone call to the only person who had ever asked me how I was doing without expecting a deposit afterward. My lawyer, Marvin. He didn't scream when he heard my voice, just went silent, then said, "June, where are you?" "Alive," I replied, which is more than I can say for my reputation. We met 2 days later in a borrowed office in the city. I wore a scarf and sunglasses, not to hide, just to shield myself from the strangeness of the world moving on without me. He had tears in his eyes, I didn't. I was past that. I want you to accept the settlement, I said. But I also want control. Of course. And I want Candace nowhere near it. Not 1 cent. He nodded, lips pressed thin. There's a trust, I said. I want to set it up in Bree's name, but with conditions. She doesn't get anything until she's 30, and she has to be free of her mother's financial influence. I want that in writing. He didn't argue. And I want you to buy me time. A year, no obituary, no statement, nothing. Just delay and misdirection. You're planning something. No, I said. I'm planning not to be the fool who gave everything and was thrown away. He leaned back, studied me. You've changed, he said. No, I replied. I just stopped pretending. The next morning, I checked myself out of the rehab center, took a cab to a small town 3 hours away, rented a 2-room apartment under a different name, June Emerson. Emerson was my grandmother's maiden name. She would have liked the poetry of it. I bought a new pair of shoes, a dark coat, a used car. I didn't look like a woman worth 18 million, but I looked like someone who had nothing to lose, because in a way I didn't. Not anymore. The first time I saw my house again, I almost didn't recognize it. The hydrangeas I planted the year after Walter died. Gone. Dug up. Tossed out. Replaced by stone chips and something that looked like artificial turf. The front door had been painted a color I can only describe as fashionable beige. Even the wind chime was gone. The one Bree made in 2nd grade, strung with shells from that weekend at Myrtle Beach. There was a plastic sign in the yard. Under contract. I parked across the street, behind a delivery van, and watched a young couple tour the front steps. The man was pointing at the roof. The woman was laughing, gesturing, as if already placing imaginary furniture. And there was my daughter, Candace, standing just behind them, dressed like a realtor, all white blazer and forced warmth. She didn't look like someone in mourning. She looked like someone closing a deal. They stepped inside, and I stayed in the car. My hands clenched the steering wheel. I don't know what I expected. To see my old curtains in the window? A ghost of my former life in the frame of the porch? Instead, it all looked like a stage set. Like I'd never been there at all. That night, back in the apartment, I opened the laptop Marvin had given me, new, untraceable, linked to a secure network, and logged in to the private folder. Inside, every email Candace had exchanged with the estate attorney she assumed was now fully hers. She'd sent him photos of furniture she wanted appraised. She'd emailed a moving company asking for a quote on storage. The old stuff can go, she'd written. Donate or dump. I scrolled through attachments, images of my dining table, my cedar chest, my mother's wedding quilt. Too shabby for resale, someone had replied. Will likely be discarded. That cedar chest was the only thing I'd brought with me when I married Walter. My mother gave it to me with her hands shaking, said, "This held everything I owned when I came west. Keep it close." And now it was marked for trash. Candace never liked that chest, said it made the bedroom feel old. She didn't want my memories. She wanted the square footage. 3 days later, I returned. Not to confront, not yet. Just to witness. To watch what people do when they think no one's looking. It was a Thursday. Warm, overcast. I watched Candace from a coffee shop window down the block. She pulled up in a silver Audi, made a call, sipped a green smoothie. Bree climbed into the passenger seat moments later. She looked tired, older, but still carried that same crooked smile she used to have as a girl. They didn't talk much, just sat there. Bree kept her arms folded. Candace gestured a lot, her voice rising, face tightening. I couldn't hear a word, but I knew that rhythm. It was the same one she used on me, whenever she wanted to make something sound like my fault. Bree didn't argue, just looked away. The Audi pulled off, and I followed. At a distance. I wasn't ready yet, but I needed to see. They drove to a storage facility. I watched as they unloaded boxes from the back. Candace had a clipboard. Bree had silence. And inside one of those boxes, I could see it through the open trunk, was a small ceramic figurine of a horse. The one I kept on my windowsill. Walter gave it to me on our 5th anniversary. When Candace lifted the box, she tilted it sideways. The figurine rolled, tapped the side, then vanished behind another box. She didn't even look. They left 20 minutes later. I parked behind the building, waited. When the manager went inside, I stepped out, walked calmly to the dumpster. There, in a pile of splintered wood and wrapping paper, lay a broken frame. My wedding photo. Glass cracked down the center, through Walter's face. I lifted it carefully, cradled it. My hands shook, not from rage. No, that had burned off. This was colder, more precise, a line drawn. She wasn't just getting rid of me, she was erasing me. I carried the frame back to the car, placed it gently on the passenger seat, looked at it. Really looked. We were so young. Walter had that dumb grin, the one he always made when nervous. My hair was too short, the veil crooked, but we were there. Real. We'd built a whole life from that moment. A child, a home, a business. Decades of dinners and dances and disagreements, and now Candace had boiled it all down to trash and contracts. That night, I called Marvin. "She's sold everything," I said. "Even my memory." There was silence on the line. Then, "What do you want to do?" I watched the crack in Walter's photo. "I want a front row seat," I said, "to the life she built on my grave. And when the moment comes, I'll let her see me. Alive. Whole. Not to haunt her, but to remind her what she lost." The law was slower than grief, but far more exact. Candace had filed the petition for legal transfer of estate assets 5 weeks after the crash. She claimed expedited authority due to lack of next of kin, a phrase that nearly made me laugh, as if I'd dropped into the world fully formed, never mothered her through measles, heartbreak, or that 3rd-grade science fair when she cried because her vinegar volcano wouldn't erupt. Marvin delayed the probate silently, skillfully. No denials, no admissions, just missing documents, follow-ups, misplaced emails. He filed quiet objections to each motion. The deceased's identity has not been conclusively verified. Further review is required. Pending clarification. The lawyer Candace hired grew impatient. She fired him, hired another. Meanwhile, she spent. The house sale had closed. She pocketed most of the cash. Bought herself a new office downtown, smaller, sleeker, full of glass walls and modern chairs. She moved her interior design firm there, rebranded as a lifestyle curation agency. She'd become the sort of woman who called herself self-made in LinkedIn bios, conveniently skipping the years when my checks paid her mortgage. Bree came to help on weekends. I watched from across the street. The girl still wore sneakers with little drawings on the sides, probably something she doodled herself. She used to draw houses with hearts inside them. Now she unpacked vases in a space where I was no longer welcome. One morning, I followed her after she left the office. She walked alone, headphones in, bag slung over one shoulder. Her pace was slower than Candace's, softer. She stopped at a bookstore. I waited, then followed. Inside, I stayed by the magazines while she browsed the fiction shelves. She ran her fingers along the spines like they were sacred. Then she picked one and sat cross-legged in the far corner, reading like no one existed. It nearly broke me. That was how she used to sit on my living room rug, reading until her head would slowly tilt and rest against the couch. Sometimes she'd fall asleep with the book still open in her lap, legs folded like a little bird. And now she sat the same way, but with a grandmother presumed dead, and a mother too busy staging life to actually live it. I left before she saw me, not because I didn't want her to, because I wasn't ready yet. Not for her, not for what would come after. Later that week, Marvin called. "She's trying to force distribution," he said, claiming undue delay. "We can hold a bit longer, but not forever." "She's running out of time?" "Yes." "Good." I spent the next 2 days making a list, not of people, not of things, of truths. Candace did not cry when I was declared dead. Candace did not call hospitals. Candace did not wait for confirmation. Candace immediately began liquidating. Candace assumed all was hers. Candace erased me. Item 7, though, was different. Candace never asked Bree how she felt about it. That was when I knew where the crack might live. Not in money, not in law, in love. Bree still wore her grandmother's necklace, a tiny locket I gave her at 13. Inside was a photo of Walter and me. She once told me she touched it during exams. "For luck, Grandma," she'd whisper. I didn't know if she still did, but she still wore it. That meant something. On Sunday, I returned to the block where my house had stood. The young couple had moved in. There were wind chimes on the porch now, cheap ones, clinking tinny and thin. I stood across the street and stared. Not because I wanted the house back, but because I needed to remember what had been mine before it was sold like a used sofa. Then I walked 5 blocks to the cafe where Candace liked to hold her client brunches. She was there, white blazer again, perfect hair, talking with 2 women in soft pastels, laughing, touching her collarbone in that exaggerated way she always used when trying to seem delicate. I sat at the counter. The server didn't question me. No one recognized me anymore. I watched her laugh, and I thought, this is what a woman looks like when she thinks she's won. She hasn't seen the board yet. By the time I walked back to my car, my decision had crystallized. I would go to her office, not to make a scene, to look her in the eye, to let her see, in that quiet moment between one breath and the next, that everything she thought buried had just stood up again. And it remembered. The receptionist smiled without recognition when I stepped into the office. That suited me fine. The lobby was all white marble and brushed gold, the kind of design that pretends to be minimal, but screams money if you know where to look. The walls were bare except for one black and white photograph of Candace herself. Arms crossed, chin tilted, eyes narrowed in that calculated confidence people practice in mirrors. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked. "Yes," I said calmly. "Tell Ms. Mallow her 10 o'clock is here." She hesitated, glanced at her screen, then back at me. "I don't have anything at 10. She'll want to see me." The receptionist made the call. I heard Candace's voice, sharp and clipped even from where I stood. "What do you mean she's already here?" A beat of silence. "Fine. Send her in." She didn't come to the door, didn't meet me halfway, just waited at her desk like the queen of some brittle little kingdom. Candace's office was pristine, a glass desk, a wall of carefully arranged books she hadn't read, a large window with a view of the city, though her chair was turned away from it. She didn't care for views, only optics. She looked at me like I was a client, perhaps a difficult one. Then she blinked. Once. Twice. Her jaw moved slightly, but no sound came out. I stepped forward and closed the door behind me. No one else needed to hear this. "Hello, Candace," I said. She didn't speak. Her hands remained on the desk, fingers spread slightly, as if she were steadying herself against an earthquake. "You look well," I added, "though I don't imagine the same can be said for your conscience." That snapped her out of it. Her face hardened, like ice reforming. "What is this?" she asked, though her voice cracked just slightly. "What? How?" "I survived." She stared. "No one called me. No one said." "No one called?" I agreed. "Because no one tried." She stood suddenly, pushing back the chair. What are you doing here? Why would you come like this, after all this time?" "To see how quickly you swept me out of your life." I thought you were dead," I said. "Yes. That was convenient for you, wasn't it?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. I took a breath and looked around the room. "You redecorated." "Again." She said nothing. I stepped closer to the desk. Not too close. Just enough to make her shift backward slightly. "You sold the house 2 months after the crash. Donated my furniture. Threw out my wedding album. Moved into this glass box. Told people you'd built everything on your own." Her lips trembled, but only for a moment. "I mourned you," she said, but her voice was empty. "I did. I just didn't know what else to do." I looked at her, really looked. Her face was flawless, tight at the jawline, not a wrinkle in sight. But her eyes were tired, not from grief, from fear. "You didn't mourn," I said softly. "You prepared." A silence stretched between us. "You weren't supposed to be on that flight," she said suddenly, desperate now. "You changed plans. No one knew. You didn't tell anyone, not even Bree. I left a voicemail the night before. You never called back." She looked down. "You just assumed," I continued. "Assumed it would be easy. That I had conveniently died and left you the pieces to arrange as you liked. That no one would check." "You don't know what it's been like," she said, suddenly angry. "The last year—" "Oh, I do," I interrupted, "because I watched it." That stopped her. "I've been here, in this city, this whole time. I've seen the house, the parties, the clients, the brunches, the speeches about reinvention and rising from grief. You didn't just erase me, Candace. You built a business on my grave." "That's not true," she whispered. "But it is." She slumped into her chair. "I needed to move on," she said, like that would make it forgivable. What was I supposed to do? Collapse? "No," I said. "You were supposed to remember who raised you." The silence in the room was suffocating. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. She stared at it. "This is a formal notification," I said. "You'll be contacted by my attorney shortly." She reached for it, hesitated, then took it. "What does it say?" "That I'm alive, and that I control every cent you were hoping to inherit." Her fingers tightened on the envelope. I turned toward the door. "Wait," she said behind me. "Why now? Why come now?" I paused with my hand on the knob. "Because I wanted to look you in the eye, Candace," I said, "and see if there was anything left of my daughter in there." I didn't wait for an answer. I left her sitting behind that glass desk, holding the letter like it was a live wire, not yet realizing the current had already passed through. It took her 3 days to respond. Marvin forwarded me the email. The subject line was a single word: clarification. No greeting, no apology. just a question about the legality of my reappearance and what it meant for the handling of previously assumed assets. Previously assumed, not my mother, not June, not even her, just assets. Marvin didn't reply right away. He called me instead. "She's trying to be careful," he said, "but she's rattled." "Good," I said. "She's also in meetings with a second attorney. I can name the firm, but not the man yet. She's looking for a workaround. She won't find one." "No," he agreed, "but she's the kind who keeps digging even after the ground is frozen." That night, I walked along the river. It was a habit I'd picked up in recovery, moving slowly, letting my legs remember their strength. The doctor said it helped rebuild muscle memory. What they didn't mention was how it rebuilt other kinds of memory, too. The kind that surfaces in silence. The kind you buried years ago, thinking it would stay still. I remembered holding Candace as a baby, pressing her to my chest after Walter died. I'd buried him in a rented suit, paid for the service in installments, and then gone home to a child who didn't understand why Daddy didn't come back. I remember her tiny hand clutching mine, saying, "It's okay, Mommy. I'm here." And now I was here. But she wasn't. Not really. Candace had built a life where love was currency. Everything had value, but only if it could be spent. The next day, I went to the bank, not to withdraw, to plant roots. "I'd like to open a trust," I told the clerk, "in the name of Brianna Claire Mallow." She blinked, tapped keys. "Is she your daughter?" "No," I said. "My granddaughter." The clerk smiled. "That's lovely. What kind of trust?" "One that protects her from everything she doesn't know she needs protection from." The paperwork took hours. I read every clause twice, then added my own. Bree would not access the funds until she turned 25. She would not be eligible if under the legal guardianship or financial control of her mother. She would not receive anything until she sat in person with my attorney and listened to the conditions herself, not as a punishment, but as a warning. I left the bank lighter. Not because I'd given Bree money, but because I'd given her a future that her mother couldn't touch. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without waking. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Candace again, not directly. But I felt her, like a cold front moving into town. She posted a new photo on her business page. New beginnings, stronger than before. Her eyes didn't look stronger. They looked cornered. Bree messaged me the next morning, not on social media, on email. The address I'd created after the accident, the one Marvin had passed along for legal updates. The subject line, "Is it really you?" I stared at it for a long time before opening. The message was short. "Grandma, I don't know if I'm allowed to write you. Mom says you're not well. She says things I don't understand. But I heard you came by her office, and I think I saw you a few weeks ago near the bookstore. If it was you, I just want to say I'm glad. I hope you're okay. Love, Bree." I read it 4 times. Then I wrote back, "Dear Bree, yes, it was me, and I'm well enough to know the truth now. Thank you for seeing me, even when no one else did. There's more I need to say. Would you meet me? Just you. Love always, Grandma June." I didn't expect her to respond quickly, but she did. 3 hours later. "Tell me where and when." I typed slowly, careful not to shake. "Tuesday, 4 p.m. That little place with the lemon tarts you liked? Corner of Delaney and 3rd? She sent a heart emoji. Just that. And somehow it meant more than all the words Candace had spoken since the day she tried to sell my memory to the highest bidder. Bree was already there when I arrived. She sat at the window table, nursing a glass of water, her eyes flicking up every time the door opened. When I stepped in, she looked straight at me. No shock, no fear. Just quiet, open recognition. She stood, slowly. "Hi," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even tentative. It was a fact. "Hi," I echoed. We hugged, awkwardly, a little stiff, but her arms didn't let go too quickly. When she sat down again, I saw she still wore the silver locket. The chain was longer now, the clasp replaced, but it was unmistakable. "You cut your hair," I said. She touched it. Felt like a change. "It suits you." A server came by. I ordered coffee. Bree asked for lemon tart, same as always. And then, for a moment, we just sat. Two women, related by blood, and a long chain of silence. "You look different," she said at last. "I am." She nodded. "I figured." The coffee came. She took a forkful of tart but didn't eat it. Just pushed the lemon curd slightly off-center. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I know. I thought, after the crash, I thought maybe it was a mistake. But Mom said everything was confirmed." She said she identified the remains. She didn't. I know that now. She looked up, finally meeting my eyes fully. She didn't grieve. No. She just moved on. Sold everything. Changed everything. I know. Bree swallowed. "The house. Your things. She said you would have wanted a clean break. That she was honoring your memory by starting fresh." A bitter laugh rose in my throat, but I kept it in. "Do you believe her?" I asked. Bree shook her head slowly. "Not anymore." A pause. "Was it hard?" she asked. "Coming back?" "No," I said honestly. "Leaving was harder." She looked at me again, and this time her expression shifted. Less guarded, more curious. "So why now?" "Because I needed to know if I still had family left." She stared at me, blinked. Her lips parted just slightly. Then she whispered, "You do." It hit me harder than I expected. I took a breath. "Your mother, she made choices. I'm not here to punish her, but I'm not pretending either." Bree nodded. "She doesn't know I'm here." "I assumed." "She said you were dangerous, that you were unstable." "Convenient." "She's scared," Bree added. "She hides it well, but I can see it." "She should be." Silence again, but not uncomfortable. Finally, Bree pushed her tart across the table. "You always used to steal the lemon part and leave me the crust." I smiled. Still my favorite. "Figures." I took a bite. Sweet. Sharp. It tasted like summers on the porch, like Sunday afternoons when the world slowed down. "I've set things in motion," I said carefully. "Legal things. Financial things. I need you to understand what that means." "I'm listening." "There's a trust," I continued, "in your name, for your future. But there are conditions." Bree didn't flinch. "Go on." "You don't get anything while your mother controls your finances. If she files as your guardian, your custodian, your anything, it's void." "I'm 20, she said. "She doesn't control me. Maybe not on paper, but I've seen the patterns." Bree bit her lip. "There's more," I said. "You'll have access at 25, not before. You'll need to meet with Marvin. Review it. Sign it with full understanding." She nodded slowly. "And if I don't?" "You walk away. No money, no pressure. Just your choice." Her shoulders relaxed, just a little, like she'd been bracing for something worse. "Why me?" she asked. "Why still give me anything at all?" "Because when I was gone, you were the only one who noticed." Tears sprang to her eyes, quick and sharp. but she blinked them back. "I missed you," she said. "So much. But I didn't know how to say it. Mom made it hard." "I know." She leaned forward, voice low. "She'll be furious when she finds out I met you. I'm counting on it." Bree actually laughed, a short, real sound that made me feel 10 years lighter. We sat there a while longer, just sipping coffee, eating tart. Two people separated by lies, stitching something back together in silence. Before she left, Bree reached across the table and took my hand. "You came back," she whispered. "I never left," I said. And this time, when we hugged, it wasn't awkward at all. Candace didn't know I was there. She sat at the back patio of a restaurant near the financial district, beneath a heater lamp that gave her skin a soft orange hue. Across from her was a woman I recognized, Deborah Lang, an old college friend turned real estate attorney. She used to come to our house when Candace was in high school, always talking fast, always chasing something. I'd asked Marvin to check her calendar. She was meeting Deborah for drinks. "Strictly business," he'd said. I wanted to see what that meant. So I arrived early, found a spot at the far edge of the patio, half shielded by a potted fern. Dark glasses, neutral coat, hair tied back. They didn't notice me. Deborah spoke first. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I've waited a year," Candace replied, sipping from a thin glass of white wine. "She doesn't get to just show up and reclaim everything. She's alive." Candace's laugh was tight, dismissive. "Barely. She looks like someone else, acts like someone else. I don't know what she wants, but I know what I'm not going to do." Deborah leaned in. "It's not about want, Candace. She's your mother. She's legally entitled." "No," Candace interrupted. "She was entitled. Then she disappeared. Now she's just a disruption." I watched her face as she said it. No tremor. No second thoughts. Just clean, practiced certainty. "You don't get to vanish for a year, then act like nothing's changed," she continued. "I built everything in that time. The firm, the brand, the story, the sympathy. I can't undo all that just because she had the nerve to not die." Deborah looked uneasy. "You sound... what? Practical?" Candace smiled thinly. "She gave up her place in this world. I stepped into it. Now she wants to take it back? I don't think so." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Because I'd been preparing for this exact confirmation. Not just that she was ambitious. I knew that. Not just that she'd rewritten the story. I expected that. But that she saw me as inconvenient, a barrier, not a mother. That was the final lock clicking shut. "She's planning something," Candace went on. "I can feel it. Bree's been distant. She asks questions." Deborah raised an eyebrow. "Do you think Bree's in contact?" Candace shrugged. "Maybe. She's always been too sentimental for her own good. I told her to stay away." "And if she doesn't?" Candace finished her wine. "Then she learns the hard way, that money and loyalty don't mix." They paused when the waiter came. I watched Candace carefully wipe the condensation from her glass with a napkin. Always tidy, always in control. Then she said, "If she sues, I'll challenge her competency. If she plays generous, I'll publicize the instability. No judge wants to deal with an elderly woman who shows up after being presumed dead." Deborah looked at her, long and quiet. "You've thought this through." "I've lived this through," Candace replied. That's when I stood. Walked calmly out of the patio. Not fast, not loud. Just with the kind of certainty I hadn't felt in years. I didn't need to hear more. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't even hiding. She was preparing to destroy me a second time, but this time with witnesses. Back in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the letter Marvin had prepared weeks earlier. It was sealed, addressed to the state bar, with copies of Candace's financial declarations, emails to probate courts, a timeline of her actions during the year I was presumed dead. It had been sitting there like a gun on a mantel. I reached for it, paused, then opened a new envelope instead, wrote a note to Bree. 2s, 10 a.m. Walk with me. We need to talk. Bring your questions. I'll bring the truth. I didn't need revenge, but Bree deserved to know who her mother had become and who her grandmother refused to remain. Bree was waiting near the fountain when I arrived. The morning was cool, fog curling low across the grass. She had her hands in the pockets of an oversized sweatshirt, hood down, hair pulled into a loose bun. She didn't look like a young woman at a crossroads. She looked like someone who already knew the direction and was just waiting to hear it confirmed. We started walking without a word, around the path, past the roses. The park was mostly empty except for a few joggers and a man feeding pigeons. I saw her, I said. Bree looked at me. She was with a lawyer, talking about contingency plans. Bree didn't ask which lawyer or what kind of plans. She just said, "That sounds about right." She called me a disruption. Bree flinched. And she said, if I tried anything legal, she'd challenge my competency. We kept walking. "She doesn't want you back," Bree said quietly. "Not really. She wants the version of you that stays out of the way, the version that doesn't speak. She thinks I'm a problem to be managed." Bree kicked at a stone. "She manages everything, people, outcomes, stories. Since I was little." We reached a bench. I sat. Bree did too. "She ever try to manage you?" I asked. Bree gave a soft laugh. "Every day." "And do you let her?" She didn't answer right away. "I used to," she finally said. "I used to think if I just went along, it would be easier. Less tension, less drama. She's good at making you feel like you're the one making things hard." I nodded. I knew that trick. Lived it for decades. But then, Bree continued, she started telling me who to be, what kind of internships to take, who to date, what to post, how to dress. And I started pushing back, quietly. She noticed, said I was drifting, called it a phase, said I was ungrateful. Bree stared at the trees. "She said the same thing about you, after the crash, that you were difficult, controlling, emotionally distant, that the house felt like a weight." I didn't respond. She told people she was relieved, that she could finally breathe. I remember thinking, that's not grief. "No," I said, "it's not." A squirrel darted past the path. Somewhere nearby, a child shrieked with laughter. Bree looked at me again. "So what now?" "I told you about the trust." She nodded. "But there's more than money involved." "I figured." "You'll have to choose," I said. "Not sides, not between me and her, between what's true and what's easier." Bree tilted her head, thoughtful. "That's not hard." "Isn't it?" She met my gaze squarely. "I used to think keeping quiet was loyalty," she said. "Now I think it's just permission." I almost smiled. "Smart girl," I murmured. Bree reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "She's going to come after you," she said. "I think she already is." "I'm not worried." "She'll say you're unstable, that you disappeared on purpose. She'll twist it." "I've survived worse than her narratives." Bree glanced down, then back up. If it gets ugly, what do you want me to do? I thought for a long moment. Stay clean, I said. Let her wreck herself. She's been writing her own ending for a year. Let her finish it. Bree looked relieved and a little sad. Do you ever miss the version of her that loved you? I didn't answer immediately. Then, I miss the version of her that didn't need to win all the time. Bree nodded slowly. I'm going to move out, she said, almost as an afterthought. I've been saving. A friend of mine needs a roommate. It's not much, but it's mine. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. I'm proud of you, I said. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Neither did I. We just sat there, the two of us, in the stillness of the park. Not plotting, not hiding, just claiming space. Together. And somewhere far off, I imagined Candace pacing, dialing, demanding, trying to rearrange the story again. But this time, she'd find the ending already written. And it wasn't hers. The second time I walked into her office, I didn't wait for an invitation. The receptionist looked up, startled. She must have remembered me, perhaps not as a name, but as the woman who'd arrived weeks ago and left something behind that made the walls tremble. She's in a meeting, the girl stammered. I'll wait inside. She hesitated. I kept walking. Candace's office door was half closed. I pushed it open, calm, steady, unhurried. Inside, she was pacing. On the phone, a tight line between her eyebrows. She turned, startled. I'll call you back, she snapped into the phone, then hung up without waiting for a response. June, she said, like she might say, storm warning. Candace. Her arms crossed automatically, a physical barrier. I said nothing. Let her speak first. You can't just barge in here. I can. You're not well. I'm better than I've been in years. She looked toward the hallway, as if checking for an audience. What do you want? She asked, low and sharp. I've already taken what I want. I'm just here for the silence that comes after. She scoffed. You think you're righteous, but you abandoned everything. Disappeared. Left me to deal with the wreckage. You mean the house? The money? The life you built on a mistake you never corrected? I didn't know how to fix it. You didn't want to. Her mouth pressed into a line. You sold the house, Candace. Not because you had to, because you could. You weren't grieving. You were cleaning. I was surviving. No, I survived. She flinched. I crawled out of that crash with bones broken and blood in my lungs. I lay in a hospital bed while you took measurements for new countertops. I thought you were dead. You didn't check. I had to keep going. No, I said. You had to slow down. But that would have meant seeing what you'd become. She looked away. I came here today to look at you. Not to yell. Not to plead. Just to see. And you know what I see? She didn't respond. I see someone who's still afraid. Not of me. Of exposure. Of not being the hero in the story you tell everyone else. I never asked to be the villain. No one ever does. But you cast the role, Candace. You picked the scene. You closed the curtain. A flicker of something crossed her face. Not regret. Recognition. You've always thought you were better than me, she whispered. No, I said. I always hoped you'd be better than this. She turned her back. Walked to the window. You ruined everything. I stepped forward. No, I said. I remembered everything. You tried to forget. She turned sharply. What do you want from me? An apology? A confession? A headline? None of that. Then why are you here? To show you I'm not afraid anymore. And you should be. She stared at me. You still think you have control, I said quietly. But you don't. Bree knows the truth. The courts know the truth. The money? Locked? The house? Gone? The legacy? Already shifted. Candace's shoulders sagged, not from defeat, from exhaustion. The effort of keeping up the story was breaking her down faster than I ever could. You raised a smart girl, I added, and she made a smarter choice. I gave her everything. No, I said. You gave her conditions. I gave her space. A long silence followed. Not angry, just hollow. Finally, she asked, "What happens now?" "I leave," I said. "You stay and live with what you did." I turned to go. "Wait," she said, voice suddenly fragile. "Do you hate me?" I paused at the door, considered. "No," I said. That would mean I still expected something. I didn't slam the door. I closed it like you close the cover of a book you're never going to open again. The office was small, tucked above a bakery that smelled like burnt sugar and fresh bread. Marvin chose it for privacy, not prestige. No polished reception, no glass doors. Just a heavy file cabinet, a pot of coffee that had been sitting too long, and a man who had known my signature longer than most had known my name. He stood when I entered. "June," he said simply. "Let's begin." He didn't offer small talk. He knew me better than that. I sat down. He opened the folder. "Here's the trust," he said. "Amended to reflect your final stipulations. It will be irrevocable upon your signature. The sum—" "I know the sum," I interrupted. "What matters is what comes after." He nodded. "This document establishes the June Mallow Foundation for Transitional Women," he continued. "Mission: to assist women aged 50 and above in regaining financial and legal independence after spousal loss or family displacement." I read the clause again. "Add a line," I said. "We help the ones no one checks on." Marvin smiled briefly. Done. He flipped to the next section. "Regarding your estate, property, residual assets, investment accounts, all shall transfer to the foundation, excluding the trust designated for Brianna Claire Mallow." He paused. "You're sure?" "Yes." "She'll inherit directly?" "At 25. No earlier. No exceptions." "And Candace?" "She receives nothing. Not in cash, not in kind, not even mention." He didn't blink, just made a note. I signed the first document, then the next. Each signature came easier than the last, not because the weight lessened, but because I was no longer carrying it alone. We moved to medical directives. "Should you become incapacitated," Marvin said gently, "you've designated Brianna as your healthcare proxy." "Yes." "And power of attorney?" "She'll have it when she's ready. Until then, you hold it." He nodded. "And if Candace challenges any of this?" "She can try." He smiled again, not wide, but enough. We moved on. Final arrangements, burial or cremation. No ceremony, no eulogies. "Write this in," I said. "Let the quiet speak for her. She said what she needed to while she lived." Marvin's pen paused mid-stroke. Then he wrote it exactly as I said. By the time we were done, the sun had shifted across the window, casting long shadows across the file. He closed it. "Do you want to keep a copy?" "No, but give one to Bree when the time comes." Marvin folded his hands on the desk. "You're certain about all of this?" "Yes." "It's generous. It's intentional." He leaned back, looked at me with something like respect. "I've known you a long time, June, but I've never seen you this clear." "I was waiting," I said, "for the noise to stop. And now, I can hear my own voice again." I stood, smoothed my coat. At the door, he asked, "One more thing. If Candace tries to apologize?" "She won't." "But if she does?" I looked back at him. She'll be speaking to someone who no longer owes her the courtesy of listening. Outside, the street was quiet. I walked slowly, letting the autumn wind tug at my sleeves. I passed a woman sitting on a bench, clutching a paper bag like it was gold. Her hands trembled. I nodded to her. She nodded back. No words. Some things didn't need saying. I'd spent 72 years waiting for someone to come save me from the slow erasure of being needed only in pieces. Money, advice, shelter, silence. And now? Now I had a foundation, not just in ink and structure, in knowing who I was, what I wouldn't allow again, and who, when everything else falls away, will remember me not for what I gave up, but for what I reclaimed. The letter arrived on a Thursday, hand-delivered, no warning. Candace had just finished a client call when the receptionist buzzed through. "There's a courier here. He says it's for you, personally. Have him leave it. He says it's by instruction. Hand off only." Candace sighed. "Fine. Send him in." The man was plain. Khakis, windbreaker, clipboard. He didn't linger, just handed over a thin envelope with her name typed neatly in the center. "Have a good day," he said, then walked out without looking back. Candace stared at the envelope. No logo, no markings. She opened it. Inside, a single page. Letterhead simple, legal, subject, formal notification of estate closure and financial forfeiture. She read the first line, then again, and again. Her hands began to tremble. Marvin's name was there, of course. Always Marvin. Loyal, gray, quiet Marvin. The man who'd known her mother for longer than Candace had understood the concept of money. The language was dry, impersonal. Per Section 4, Clause B of the Revised Estate Directive executed under the full legal and medical capacity of June Eleanor Mallow, all previously assumed claims on property, assets, and inheritance under your name are hereby nullified. Effective immediately. The letter explained the trust for Brianna, the foundation, the updated will. It confirmed in precise language what Candace had feared but refused to admit. Her mother had returned, had rewritten the narrative, and had done it completely. There was no money coming, no residuals, no fallback. Everything she'd quietly considered hers, already spent in plans and promises, was gone. Legally, irrevocably, and most cruelly, cleanly. There was no scandal, no accusation, no dramatic confrontation she could counter or spin. Just finality. Candace sat back in her chair. Her hands were still on the paper, but her eyes were unfocused now, staring somewhere beyond the edges. The office felt colder than usual. She read the letter again, this time slower. There was a single line near the end, brief, unadorned, placed like an afterthought. No further correspondence is required. She crumpled the letter in one hand, then stopped. Uncrumpled it, smoothed the creases with flat palms. A part of her wanted to call Marvin, demand explanation, threaten legal action. But she knew it wouldn't change a thing. This wasn't a challenge. It was a conclusion. And conclusions couldn't be undone with posture or pressure. She sat there for a long time, long after the office emptied for lunch. The clock ticked. Her phone buzzed. Her laptop blinked with reminders. But she moved only once, to open her drawer, pull out a small, square photo in a cheap plastic frame. It was the only one she still kept of the three of them. Walter, June, Candace at 7 on her mother's lap, grinning with missing front teeth. She stared at it, not with nostalgia, but with an emptiness that finally had form. She had won so quickly, and lost so thoroughly, and no one, not a single soul, was coming to explain why, because she already knew. The house looked smaller now, not because it had changed, but because I had. Something about survival shrinks the myth of place. You start to see not the size of the rooms, but the echo in them, the weight of who spoke loudest, the silence you once let settle in the corners. I parked across the street, same as before. No tinted windows, no disguise. I didn't care who saw me. A new family lived there now. Young couple, child, tricycle in the yard, a soccer ball under the bush. There were curtains in the window I never would have chosen, floral with too much yellow. A ceramic rooster perched on the porch rail. It made me smile. I didn't come to trespass, or to speak. I came to remember without mourning. I watched the mother step onto the porch. She called a name I didn't catch, something short and sweet, and the child, maybe 4 years old, ran out with wild hair and socks that didn't match. She laughed, that big, clumsy laugh children make when they're not trying to be charming. For a moment, I saw Candace, 3 years old, running through a sprinkler in this same yard, water in her eyes, screaming with joy. And then I remembered the night she was 16, yelling at me from the porch steps, saying I didn't understand anything, that I made everything harder, that she couldn't wait to leave. Both memories lived in this grass. Both belonged to me. I didn't look away. The front door had been repainted, sage green, the number plate replaced, my wind chime gone. But the porch creaked the same when the woman stepped inside, child in tow, leaving the door ajar just long enough for warm music to spill into the air. I exhaled. I had planted roses along the side fence once. There was no trace of them now, just mulch and a row of new shrubs that looked too orderly for this kind of home. It didn't hurt. It didn't need to. I wasn't here to reclaim anything. This was no longer my house, but it would always be the place I became someone no one expected me to be. A wife, a mother, a widow, and eventually, a woman who chose to stop disappearing. I stepped out of the car, walked across the street, stopped just before the driveway. No need to go further. I stood there, looking up at the window that used to be my bedroom. I remembered the sound of rain against it, the hum of the old fan. Walter never got around to replacing. The quiet. The long, aching quiet of someone waiting to be thanked. But no one owes you gratitude for what they never saw you lose. And maybe that was the hardest part, not being unloved, but being unseen. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a photograph, an old one, faded at the edges. It was me on the porch, barefoot, laughing at something Walter had said, with Candace curled in my lap. Bree must have taken it, too young to frame it right, but still catching what mattered. I crossed the driveway, placed it gently under the mailbox, weighted with a small, flat stone. Then I turned back. I wasn't leaving a message, just a fact. I had been here, and I no longer needed to prove it. As I walked away, the breeze shifted. The new wind chimes played a different tune than mine ever did, lighter, almost sharp. But still, music. Still, something that moved when the air insisted. And I let it play me out. Bree arrived just before noon. She didn't knock. She never did anymore. Just let herself in, kicked her shoes off by the door and called out, "It's just me," like she had when she was 10 and afraid of startling me if I was napping. "I hope you're hungry," she said, lifting the brown paper bag. That old man at the deli finally got the potato salad right. I was already at the table, 2 plates out, forks aligned like I still cared about symmetry. She unpacked the bag with practiced ease. Sandwiches, the salad, 2 apples, a bar of chocolate we'd split later without discussing it. She poured water into mismatched glasses and sat across from me like it was any other Tuesday. I didn't say much. Neither did she. That was the beauty of it now. What used to be silence between us had become ease. We ate slowly, no rush. She told me about a class she was taking, art history, something elective, something that didn't count for anything except my own joy. I told her that was the only kind of learning worth anything at all. "You sound like a fortune cookie," she said, smiling. "You sound like someone finally doing what she wants." Maybe I am. We didn't talk about Candace. Not because we were pretending she didn't exist, but because, in that moment, she didn't matter. I watched Bree tuck her hair behind her ear, saw the way her hands moved when she talked, still expressive, still bright. Her face had changed just slightly in the past year, less soft, more deliberate. But the girl I'd once read stories to was still in there, just taller now, and wise in a way I'd never been at her age. After lunch, we went out to the small back patio. I kept a few potted herbs there, nothing ambitious, just mint, rosemary, thyme, things that reminded me of seasons and purpose. Bree knelt beside the largest pot. "This one needs water." "I know. You're letting it dry out. I was waiting for you to notice." She looked up, smirked. "You're annoying. You're slow." She laughed, then went inside to fill the watering can. When she came back, I sat in the sun, letting it rest on my arms like something earned. She poured gently, carefully, like she understood what too much care could do. When she finished, she didn't stand. She stayed crouched beside the pot, picking at a leaf, and said, "I think I'm going to apply for that gallery internship." "The one in Portland?" She nodded. "I've been scared to leave." "You're not leaving." She looked at me, unsure. "You're moving forward. Big difference." She swallowed. "What if I miss you?" "You will." That made her eyes wet. Just a little. "Will you miss me?" she asked, quieter. "Every damn day." She smiled through it, wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "Good." I leaned back in the chair, let the moment stay exactly where it was. The wind picked up, brushing the trees gently. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A siren faded. The world went on. "You know," I said, not opening my eyes, "when I was your age, I thought healing meant forgetting, moving on, pushing through. And now? Now I think it just means telling the truth over and over until it stops hurting to say it out loud." Bree nodded. "Even if no one believes it?" "Especially then." We sat like that for a long time, not talking, not needing to. Before she left, she hugged me hard, not polite, not short. She held on. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She squeezed tighter. When she pulled away, she said, "You changed everything, you know." I shook my head. "No, I just stopped pretending." She looked at me for a moment longer, then left. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because I was full. And sometimes that's all peace is. Not the absence of pain, just the moment when pain finally has nowhere else to go.
H1. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Alright, buckle up because the title of today's story is insane. My daughter said, "Mom's plane crashed. Finally, we can sell everything. I survived. The airline." Hold on. Let me reread that, because wow. Your daughter heard your plane crashed, and her first thought was finally we can sell everything. Not grief, not shock, not oh my god, is she okay? But finally. And then there's that cliffhanger. The airline. Something's about to go down. Slide period. This is gonna be a wild ride. This is betrayal, survival, and what sounds like some justice coming. Let me get my water. Let me get comfortable, because this story is about to take us through all the emotions. Let's dive in. Here we go. Okay, so our narrator is a woman named Patricia. Successful businesswoman, 58 years old. She's describing her life. She built a real estate empire from nothing. Divorced about 10 years ago, raised 2 kids mostly on her own while building her business. Classic, self-made success story. So we're starting with someone who worked for what she has. She didn't inherit it, she built it. Important context. She's describing her daughter. We'll call her Emma, 32 years old. And Patricia is saying that Emma has always been difficult, entitled, had expensive tastes, but didn't want to work for anything. Always asking for money, always wanting handouts. Patricia tried to teach her about earning, about responsibility, but Emma just grew resentful. She felt like her mother had all this money and should just share it freely. The concept of, I worked for this, you should too, never landed. Already seeing red flags. Oh boy, the entitlement is showing early. This is someone who sees their parent as a bank account, not a person. Now Patricia's talking about her son. Different story. He's 29, works hard, never asks for handouts, proud of his own accomplishments. Patricia helped him with college, helped with his first house down payment, normal parental support, but he never expected it or demanded it. So we have 2 different children with 2 different mindsets. Emma sees mom's success as something she's entitled to. The son sees it as something to aspire to build himself. Leaning forward. Patricia is describing how Emma has been pressuring her for years to share the wealth, asking when she's going to get her inheritance, literally asking her living mother when she can have her money. The audacity. And when Patricia says, I'm not dead yet, and when I am, you'll get what I decide to leave you, Emma gets angry. Acts like her mother is being selfish. Like she's withholding what's rightfully Emma's. Girl, it's not yours until she's gone. And even then, it's her choice how to distribute it. Now we're getting to the trip. Patricia had been planning a business trip to South America. Important meetings, potential deals, flying commercial because her private jet was in maintenance. She mentions to Emma that she's taking this trip. And Emma's response is weird. Too cheerful. Too interested in the details. When do you leave? What airline? What flight number? Questions that seem innocent but feel off. Suspicious music plays in my head. Patricia describes this uncomfortable feeling she had, but she brushed it off. Told herself she was being paranoid. Emma was her daughter. Why would she be worried? Trust your gut. When something feels off, it usually is. So Patricia leaves for her trip. The flight is long, like 8 hours. She's working on her laptop, reviewing documents, typical business trip stuff. Everything is normal. Until, about 2 hours from landing, there's a mechanical issue. The plane starts shaking. Alarms are going off. The pilot comes on the intercom and says they're making an emergency landing. Patricia describes the terror. The oxygen masks dropping. People crying, praying. The flight attendants trying to stay calm, while clearly being scared themselves. The plane is plummeting. She thinks she's going to die. She's thinking about her kids, her life, all the things she never said or did. In what she thinks are her final moments. She's thinking about her children. The plane crashes in a remote area. Not a full crash. More like a crash landing. The pilots manage to get it down, but it's rough. The impact is devastating. Injuries, chaos, people screaming. Patricia is hurt. Broken ribs, concussion, cuts and bruises everywhere. But she's alive. Against all odds, most people on the plane survived. Some serious injuries, but the pilot's skill saved them. They're in the middle of nowhere, though. Cell service is spotty. It takes hours for rescue teams to get there. Patricia is in and out of consciousness, in pain, traumatized, but alive. Meanwhile, and this is where it gets dark, back home, the news breaks. Plane crashes in South America. All passengers feared dead. The early reports are wrong, incomplete, but that's what's being reported. Emma sees the news. She knows her mother was on that flight. And what does she do? She calls her brother. And Patricia later finds out what was said in this call because her son recorded it. He recorded his sister because something about her tone made him uncomfortable. And Emma says, "I need you to hear this. Did you see the news? Mom's plane crashed. They're saying everyone's dead. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for. We can finally sell everything. The houses, the business, everything. We're about to be rich." Silence. Explosion of disbelief. What we've been waiting for? She was waiting for her mother to die. And her first thought isn't grief, it's money. The brother is apparently shocked. He's like, "Emma, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom might be dead, and you're talking about selling her stuff." And Emma gets defensive. "Oh, don't act like you don't want the money. Don't be a hypocrite. This is what inheritance is. She's gone, now it's ours." The brother tells her she's sick and hangs up, but he saved that recording. Something told him to document this. Sitting back down, processing. Meanwhile, Patricia is being rescued. She's airlifted to a hospital in South America. She's in bad shape, but stable. The airline is working on contacting families, but it takes time because of the remote location, the communication issues, the chaos. So for about 24 hours, Emma thinks her mother is dead. And in those 24 hours, guess what she's doing? Getting angry. She's calling lawyers. She's calling real estate agents. She's trying to get access to Patricia's accounts. She's literally trying to start liquidating her mother's assets before the body is even found. The brother is watching this in horror. He's trying to tell her, "We don't even know anything for sure yet. Can you at least pretend to grieve?" But Emma is on a mission. She goes to Patricia's house, has a key from years ago that Patricia forgot she gave her, and starts going through stuff. Looking at jewelry, art, valuables, making plans. The ghoulishness of it. Your mother is supposedly dead, and you're in her house, shopping for what you want to take. Then the news updates. Survivors found. Rescue operation underway. But they don't release names yet. Emma sees this and panics. What if her mother is one of the survivors? What if she gets caught having done all this? She tries to cover her tracks, puts stuff back, acts like she was just checking on Mom's house, out of grief. But the brother saw her. He knows what she was doing. And then, Patricia calls. From the hospital in South America. Weak voice, but alive. She calls her son first, because he's always been the reliable one. "Hi, honey. I'm okay. I survived. I'm in the hospital, but I'm going to be fine." Her son cries, tears of relief, of joy. His mother is alive. And then he says something that makes Patricia confused. "Mom, I need to tell you something about Emma. Before you call her, you need to know what she did." Intense music. And he plays her the recording. He plays her Emma, saying, "Finally, we can sell everything." He tells her about the lawyers, the house, the attempts to access accounts. Patricia is in a hospital bed, in pain, traumatized from a plane crash, and now she's learning that her daughter was celebrating her supposed death. The betrayal. Not just that Emma wanted her money, but that she couldn't even wait for confirmation of death before trying to cash in. The eagerness of it. Patricia says she cried. Not from physical pain, from emotional devastation. Her own daughter, her baby girl, saw her as nothing more than an obstacle between Emma and money. But then, something shifts in Patricia. The pain turns to determination. The sadness turns to clarity. She survived a plane crash. She's getting a second chance at life, and she's going to use it. Standing up, she tells her son, "Don't tell Emma I'm alive yet. I want to see how far she goes. I want proof of exactly who she is, and then we're going to handle this." Her son is worried. "Mom, you just survived a plane crash. You should rest, not deal with this." But Patricia is firm. "I need to know the truth. All of it. Help me." So they set up a plan. The son tells Emma that he spoke to the hospital and confirmed Mom didn't survive. That she was initially alive but died from her injuries. A lie. But Emma doesn't know that. Emma's response? "Oh my God, that's so sad." Anyway, we need to meet with the lawyer tomorrow to start the process. Hand over face. Not even a pretend moment of grief, just straight to business. Over the next few days, while Patricia is recovering in South America and documenting everything with hospital records, the airline, everything, her son is documenting Emma's actions. Emma goes to lawyers trying to be declared executor of the estate. She contacts banks trying to access accounts. She calls real estate investors to get evaluations of Patricia's properties. All while Patricia is supposedly freshly dead. The son gets it all on record. Recordings, emails, text messages. Emma is creating a paper trail of her greed. Excited for the justice coming. Then Patricia comes home. She doesn't announce it. She just shows up at Emma's apartment, rings the doorbell. Emma opens the door and screams. Literally screams. Because she's seeing a ghost. Except it's not a ghost. It's her very alive, very aware mother. Patricia just stands there, bruised, in a neck brace from the injuries, and says, "Hello, Emma, disappointed to see me." The entrance, the moment, the look on Emma's face. Emma tries to recover. "Mom, oh my God, they said you died. I was so worried. I was just trying to handle things." And Patricia cuts her off. Handle things. Is that what we're calling it? Calling lawyers before my body was cold. Going through my house, taking inventory. Trying to access my bank accounts. Emma's face goes white. She realizes she got caught. She tries to lie. "I don't know what you're talking about. I was just trying to protect your assets. I was being responsible." And Patricia pulls out her phone. "Really? Because I have recordings that tell a different story. Would you like to hear yourself saying, 'Finally we can sell everything'? Or maybe the part where you told your brother, 'This is what we've been waiting for'?" Emma's defense crumbles. She tries anger next. "You are spying on me? That's invasion of privacy." Laughing incredulously. The audacity. She's caught being ghoulish, and she's mad? Patricia stays calm. "I didn't spy on you, Emma. I simply didn't correct the misinformation that I was dead. And you showed me exactly who you are when you thought there were no consequences." Emma tries tears next. The manipulation playbook. "Mom, please, I made a mistake. I was just stressed and emotional. I didn't mean any of it." But Patricia is done. "You weren't emotional, Emma. You were excited. And that tells me everything I need to know." Standing up. Here comes the consequences. Patricia lays it out. 1. Emma is removed from the will, completely. Not getting a dime. 2. Any previous gifts or loans to Emma are now being called in. Pay it back or face legal action. Stay blessed, stay grateful, and appreciate your loved ones while they're here. Peace. P.S.